California electricity rates have doubled in less than 10 years. And at the same time, we're adding more power capacity to the US grid than we have in decades. And guess what? This year, 93% of expected capacity added to the US grid is expected to be from renewables, because it is just cheaper and better. And the market will always win. Solar and storage capacity is growing by 30 to 50% per year, and prices are plummeting. We added the equivalent of 10 Hoover dams in solar capacity last year alone. The scale of this transition is literally $1 trillion. And it is happening because the market will pick the winners. And it just like happened in the mid-2000s when coal was king and we had 310 new coal plants planning to be built. And then guess what? We discovered fracking. And natural gas went from 5% to 50% of the energy equation. And it was the death of King Coal in the US, right? No matter what the Bush administration wanted. We are on a path to 2 to 3 degrees Celsius over the goal that we want in terms of temperature due to the climate. But there are massive businesses that are going to be built to get us to the other side of this. Crisis is happening and it's urgent, and we need speed and scale, and we have the technology to do it, and it's already happening. So get on board.
Anay, welcome to the Slice Pod, where we uncover the stories of fresh emerging managers across the early stage venture landscape. You're the co-founder and general partner of stepchange, investing into software-enabled climate companies across pre-seed and seed. Let's begin where we always do around here, and it's by asking, how did we get to this point? Was this always the plan? Did you always know that you were going to start your own fund?
Yeah, the easy answer is absolutely not. This was never the plan, and happened, as all good things in life happened, because of luck and the universe and other factors conspiring. Good time to rewind all the way through my background. So I'm coming off almost 2 decades of helping build a few different global startups. I started off my career at the State Department, actually at an unknown agency until a few months ago called USAID, which now has become famous, and had the great pleasure of serving our government, working across 15, 16 different emerging markets on a wide range of issues facing humanity, from climate and environment to democracy governance to public health to education. Got excited about climate. This was in the mid-2000s, got tired of the government and decided to leave my good government job and move to India to join an early stage off-grid solar company called D-Light. I actually moved on a 10-month unpaid fellowship. Not only was I leaving a good job and not getting paid, but I was moving back to the country that my parents were from. My dad was absolutely aghast.
Immigrant doctor father must have been so proud of you. This is exactly why I worked so hard.
You nailed it. It was basically everything an immigrant father didn't want you to do, let alone go and sell solar lanterns in rural villages across India. But that's what I ended up doing for 3 years. First taste of startups, first taste of living and working in emerging markets, the first real taste of sales, which has kind of ended up being an important thread. Came back to the US and was getting my MBA at Stanford. I was doing a dual degree in energy and environmental management and had this full intention. I was locked in on the climate crisis and energy management. But as it happens at Stanford, you end up dropping at least 1 degree. So I finished the MBA, dropped out of the second degree, and ended up in a decade of fintech. I moved up to Seattle to join a 9-person pre-Series A startup with this dream to take on the behemoths of Western Union, MoneyGram, and the folks that are moving money across borders. And this company's called Remitly. And it ended up being a very fortuitous opportunity and decision. We grew from 10 people to 400 people while I was there. I did a little bit of everything, as you do at a startup, but mostly ran international expansion. I launched our first 12 new markets, doing everything from product market fit to go to market end to end. And also met my wife. We got married and spent about 5 years growing Remitly. For a variety of reasons, we decided to step away from our jobs and the US and bought a one-way ticket to East Africa and ended up in Nairobi, Kenya for a couple of years and joined another fintech startup called Tala, which does digital banking in emerging markets, and spent 5 years as an exec at Tala, kind of later stage growth. So I left Remitly after we raised our Series D, joined Tala right after they'd closed their Series C, and spent 5 years in that next stage of growth of a global fintech. I was kind of GM of GMs. I had a 250-person team. We had an $80 million P&L, that next kind of level of responsibility. And that brought me from Kenya to LA. 5 years there, spent a decade doing financial inclusion. Remitly IPO'd, COVID happened, we had a kid, life's turns upside down. I just took a moment to step back and was like, do I want to continue this journey of working for incredible companies in fintech? As soon as I asked myself that question, the answer for me was I needed to come back to my original love, which was energy and climate. I made the tough decision in late 22 to step away from Tala and transitioned over 6 months, and then went on sabbatical in 23 and just decompressed, did some things for my mind, body, soul, and family. And of course, couldn't resist staying a little bit involved. So started angel investing, started LPing in a number of funds, both in fintech as well as in climate, and began this journey of I talked to probably 150 people over the course of 4 or 5 months in and around climate investing. It was on that journey that I met my now co-founder, Ben, in the summer of 23. We started jamming, and stepchange, what it is today, was born from that. We are both reluctant VCs, operators turned investors who were obsessed with wanting to help early stage founders and lend our expertise and experience to founders solving massive problems around the energy transition.
What was the aha moment that got you and Ben to say, let's build a vehicle? Was it excessive deal flow on your angel practice? Was it like you couldn't find a fund that you would want to LP in that would invest in this category with the level of conviction that you guys have, or the level of taste that you reflect?
It's a good question. There's a couple angles to this. I think first and foremost, it's the partnership. I think everything in this business begins and ends with that GP partnership. For Ben and I, we went on this organic founder dating journey where we met and we were talking every 2 weeks, then we were talking every week. And then before you know it, we were on calls with no formal relationship to each other for like 6 hours a day, looking at companies and building around this thesis. When I met Ben, he had stood up the LLC and he had gotten the skeleton and bones of stepchange up and running. He had written this incredible guide to software in climate that when I read it and met him, I was like, this is truth. He was speaking my language and he synthesized why the role of software is going to be the catalytic force to create billion-dollar companies around the energy transition. 2 aha moments. One was when we realized we were texting each other more than we were texting our wives. The second was after 5 or 6 months of being remote, he's in Seattle. I just flew up there and I was like, listen, we need to spend 24 hours together. And we literally, morning to night, we just walked the city of Seattle and we went from park to park, restaurant to restaurant. We ate amazing Mediterranean Lebanese food. We talked a little bit about work, but mostly about ourselves and our values and what motivated us, and realized that we shared some really fundamental ways that we look at the world. We already knew that we shared views on the industry. That trip solidified what ends up being a decade-long or hopefully multi-decade-long relationship.
What's the dynamic between the two of you? Do you split responsibilities? Do you both do everything?
Yeah. So we formally incorporated in late 23. We're building as we fly. We did a first close immediately, pulled in a couple million initially so we could deploy while we were fundraising. He's a 2-time founder, started a company, sold it to Google, worked at Google, started a second company, sold it to Stripe, worked at Stripe before turning to climate. I'm much more of this scale-up guy from 10 people to pre-IPO. We lean that way in terms of where we get excited and when we're jamming with founders. He's also much more of a product person. That's the type of founder he is. And I'm much more go-to-market and product market fit. We lean differently that way.
Where did that first 2 mil came from?
Yeah, I think classic emerging manager fund 1 first close. It was primarily all folks we knew. It was folks in our network coming in below the minimums in many cases as a demonstration of support to get the ball rolling. Bain Capital came in as an anchor through their emerging managers program. We were blessed to have them join early, which added a lot of credibility and help for us. Once we started investing, it wasn't just a vision, there was a portfolio to look at. We started having our founders introduce us to potential LPs and other LPs, and then the snowball started going. But it's very much angels and BCV.
And pretty good timing in a way, in a weird way, from an emerging manager standpoint. but terrible timing probably from the vertical that you picked. Or do you feel different about this statement? I'm curious.
From a venture perspective, I can't imagine a worse time to raise a fund. We're operators turned investors. This is our first time managing other people's money. We don't have a brand in climate and investing. And we're coming off of the 21, 22 highs, and the asset class of venture has just cratered. From a climate perspective, it's interesting. We could talk more about this because it flows into our thesis, but there was some tailwinds in the Biden administration with the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as a handful of success stories over the past decade. But generally speaking, we're investing in a vintage of climate founders that are very unit economic focused and building commercial businesses. And so I think we've exited the time, perhaps 3, 4, 5 years ago, where climate tech was closer to it's okay to pay a green premium or ESG oriented, or you're selling to the chief sustainability officer at a company behind net zero targets that seems so exciting. And those days are done. It died a swift and hard death. We actually believe for the better, because the founders that are building today and the ones that we're investing in are building real businesses that just happen to decarbonize the economy. From a climate investment perspective, we actually feel very fortunate, because we think had we been investing 3 or 4 years ago, we would have gotten caught up in that hype cycle, and we would have probably made a number of investments that wouldn't pan out because they didn't have the right commercial pull. But right now, looking ahead at the decade, it's a different story.
Climate space has been evolving. You mentioned the Biden administration. We're now in a very different landscape from a political standpoint. Those tailwinds, we could say they fairly vanished, or they turn into headwinds in most cases. How do you view the market right now from that early stage investing standpoint? Is it getting easier or harder for you guys to source opportunity? Did this scare off some of the talent from building in this space? Or do you see that maybe they're not going to call it climate, maybe they're going to put a different spin on it and still do the same thing under the guise of a slightly different packaging?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you clearly have been watching what's happening in this space. I would maybe zoom out and just level set on the fact that when we talk about climate tech, at least from our perspective, we're operating from the fact that the changing climate is a scientific phenomenon happening to the physical world. There's something happening to the world out there. The intensity of that change is resulting in changes of behavior by government, enterprise, and consumer. And climate tech is simply investing at the arbitrage opportunity of that behavior change. And as investors, we just take a unique lens of science and technology on a future low carbon economy. This is really in response to the fact that consumers, enterprises, and governments are all feeling the impact of the change in the climate. There are technologies that can be deployed to help either become more resilient or buy better, faster, cheaper products. From that basis, we look at the fundamentals and where the secular tailwinds are. We have a few different verticals that we can talk about. The train has left the station, right? We are in the early innings of $1 trillion energy transition. Businesses being founded today are going to be the next decacorns in building this future low carbon world. Now, does the current environment produce some challenges? Without a doubt, right? There's uncertainty in global macro markets of every kind. For us in particular, I think we're insulated on a few different dimensions. Number one, we invest at pre-seed and seed. So the companies that we're operating with are going to take 2, 3, 4 years to iterate through product market fit and get their first 10, 20, 40, $50 million of revenue. They're flying under the radar and don't attract federal level attention. There's the C word involved, climate. I think number two is where this current administration is taking an axe around some of the steel in the ground and larger deployments that might require concessionary capital, low interest rate debt from the DOE, and the scientific breakthroughs and hard tech that we absolutely need. As a climate student, I know there's 30-40% of the economy called the hard to abate sectors that need revolutions in nuclear fission, sustainable aviation fuel, geothermal, steel, and cement. But I also know that 60% of greenhouse gas reductions can come through technologies that exist today. And the problem is about adoption and deployment. And it just so happens that we have learned through the internet revolution, cloud computing, mobile revolution, and AI, that software is that infrastructure layer to enable adoption and deployment. And so we're investing in those businesses that are asset light, that don't have hard, deep tech risk. They can be fairly agile to enable the deployment of those technologies. As a result, the companies we're investing in are less affected by that. And then number three, as I mentioned, we're looking at companies that are selling to the CFO, not the CSO. We're looking for inherent pull from the market. And that product is either it's cheaper, better technology, better service, and it just so happens that it decarbonizes the economy. We haven't yet personally run into like the need to rebrand ourselves as American Dynamism or something like that. There may be language if this assault continues around energy infrastructure and energy security. To us, it's all the same. At the end of the day, these are incredible businesses fueling an energy transition.
Where do you find these founders? What's the sourcing strategy that you guys apply to find the best as early as you can?
I was deeply worried about the top of funnel. I have been pleasantly surprised that fear has gone unfounded for a couple different reasons. Climate tech as an investing category is distinct from enterprise SaaS or some of these boom markets because people are in it for multiple reasons. We all want to return massive funds and returns to our investors, but we're also doing this because we believe a mission-oriented thesis. Because of the perceived existential threat we all feel, the climate investing community is very close-knit and collaborative. And so there isn't as much pointy elbows of securing the deal and pushing everyone out. If these founders are going to succeed against the headwinds in the macro environment and build a new category and sell to enterprise customers that are very difficult, we need the best talent on the cap table and all hands on deck. There's this camaraderie and collaboration that's inherent in the stage of the investing category that we're in. The second thing is we're a smaller fund, a sub $10 million fund. We don't price rounds, we don't lead rounds, and we don't take board seats. As a result, we're very collaborative and high conviction investors. We will be first check in if need be, but a lot of times other investors pull us into rounds because they know how we're operators. They understand what we bring to the table. And so we've actually been blessed with good deals finding us more often than us needing to go out and hunt. A lot of founders that we've passed on, we've built a relationship with, who send us deal flow, because it turns out that all these folks that are building in their garages are talking to each other. They're working at the same co-working spaces. They're located in the same 7 cities. So tapping into that founder viral ecosystem has been very useful. We've also built a fund very intentionally with about 85 LPs. And these are, by and large, aside from the few family offices and fund of funds, these are tech execs, operators, folks at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, as well as energy CEOs and industry experts. And so they essentially all act as scouts and are all funneling us deal flow. The third piece of it is we've built extensive relationships across the climate VC ecosystem and know many great funds. The best source are the Series A funds who have 10, 12 people working for them. Meeting companies that are too early for them, we just slurp up all of that deal flow and then pass the good ones along once they graduate. I would say it is a 95% referral business. Ben's an ex-Googler, ex-Stripe, so he's got those networks. I mentor at different accelerators, and we've had deal flow come through that.
And what do you do to win? When you were saying you get this great deal flow, everybody comes through. It's a collaborative check, so it's not really going to take that much space on the cap table. But what's the value that you guys pitch to these founders? Is the reason why the best ones end up taking your money versus someone else's?
Yeah. It's a question I ask myself frequently to make sure we're always staying at the better end of our edge. Number one, we come into this as operators, not investors. We've built, scaled, and sold software companies ourselves. And that comes through in our approach, demeanor, and everything we do. Founders appreciate that. We've all had experiences with investors and board members who are incredibly smart, have phenomenal pattern recognition, and will be Midas investors, right? They will return a 10x fund. But they've also gone from investment banking to hedge funds to private equity to venture capital and have not had the same lived experience operating and those challenges. Number two is related to that, which is the diligence process. We show, not tell. We're almost always at some point switching out of pitch and evaluation mode and into feedback and reflection mode, because we've been out there, we've fundraised, we've gotten no's from 100 different people, and we know how frustrating it is. The worst thing a VC can do is take the pitch, ask a bunch of questions, great, we'll be in touch, and never talk to you again. Right? It just leaves the founder in a lurch. They gain nothing from that experience. So we want to do the opposite. And that's part of the reason we started the fund. We think we can do this game slightly differently, having experienced it. We will spend an inordinate amount of time on pass notes and write out exactly what we think needs to happen, even if we're not going to invest in it. During the process with founders, we go deeper, saying, let's come back, talk about what we're struggling with and why, and iterate together and tell you what we think. I think that immediately switches the relationship and the power dynamic. This is someone that I want to be in a relationship with for 5 years and I want to work with and I could see calling on. I think the other piece is we're building this fund. It's not just the two of us, but it's our advisors and our LPs. We're coming at this with 100 folks, not just the two of us. And we're going to tap into that network. And then I think the final point is we're fully focused and dedicated on this. Typical fund is probably 1% to 2% GP commit. We're at a 14% GP commit. We're taking most of our management fees and putting it back into the fund.
I love oversized GP commits. Do your LPs understand the kind of game you're playing, or do you think they just came on because of who you guys are and your personal relationships?
To be perfectly honest, we have a spectrum of folks supporting us. There are definitely the ones that are like, hey, I don't know anything about climate tech, but I believe in the two of you. Here's my $250K check and I'll read the updates. Best of luck. And that's perfectly fine. It's a way to diversify your personal portfolio. Then there's also the category of investors we have that are 30-year Microsoft execs or decades at Google and elsewhere who are saying, hey, I'm a parent. I have kids and I understand that the future of their life depends on the actions of today and I want to do something about it. The third category of LPs are the ones that have run multi-billion-dollar energy companies or are leading experts on policy or sustainability or the head of energy at a Meta or Google or whatever, that are way more experienced than we are at this. And they're excited about our breadth and us. And they obviously know this space inside and out, and they want to have a role to play. We do have a fairly diverse LP base in that sense. With all of them, we ensure that all of them understand the thesis. We don't want anyone thinking or telling others about step change as something that's not. And we are investing in market-ready solutions that just so happen to decarbonize the economy. And we are evaluating investments with two lenses, right? The mission lens of, does this have a direct impact on emissions and the resilience of our economy? And is this a 100x company? And does this stand to become a billion-dollar company? If it doesn't check both of those boxes for us, and then we pass.
How do you think about portfolio construction in the context of how early you go in and the kind of bets that you're making? You mentioned 14 founders today. What's the full portfolio going to look like?
We're targeting about a 1% ownership stake. So from 100 to 200K, trying to be disciplined about a hard cap on a $25 million valuation for our seed companies. The portfolio construction that we've come upon through modeling and advice of GPs and LPs is about a 30 company portfolio for Fund 1. We'll be reasonably diversified and have a reserve pool to double down on the best ones, which we've already done with two of our companies. So a third of our portfolio was marked up already last year, and another third is on track to be marked up this year, with two going through up rounds right now that we're exercising our pro rata on. We're seeing some paper traction wins. We'll look at 25 to 30 companies at the 100, 200K mark. with some double downs, and then we'll run SPVs for the others that we're not going to use fund capital for to follow on, and basically build a portfolio that is able to return a massive fund today, but gives us the track record, the credibility, the at bats to be able to go out for the, if it's a $25 or $40 million fund, whatever the future holds, to say, hey, we can graduate from the 1% ownership to the 2 to 5% ownership stake. And these are the reasons why we have built that muscle.
What's the diligence process across all of this? It's a pretty diversified portfolio. You're very early, mostly, I'm guessing, taking a bet on the team, the space. But do you run any technical due diligence on these ideas? A lot of this stuff can get very sciencey very quickly.
Tactically, the process tends to be 2 to 5 conversations with the founding team. Once we get to conversation 2, we're hitting up our network and constantly farming out to folks smarter than us to feed that back into the subsequent conversations. For the category that we're investing in, there is a lot more market ramp than there is perhaps product and technical ramp, because these are APIs. These are some enterprise softwares. These are infrastructure layers. And aside from a couple of our investments that get a little technical, the risk is not in that. It's, is this the right product for this right market at the right time, in the right market size, with the right GTM motions and founder orientation? That ends up being a lot of what we diligence. So we feel like we can rely on a lot of our fintech, which has built successful businesses in entrenched incumbent industries, right? There's a lot of parallels between fintech and energy, and our experience in the early stages. Right now, we're looking at a couple waste to energy companies. Timber companies produce all sorts of agricultural biomass waste. To date, they have to pay a tipping fee for someone to take that waste away. But in reality, there's value to be gained from that. You can convert wood chips into biochar and sell that biochar as fertilizer input. And then it just happens you can get some carbon credits on top of it. We had some kind of scientific understanding needed to understand the different qualities of biochar. It's much more around a question of market risk. Is the market mature and ready? And so we end up going to experts more around that. As operators and product people ourselves, we've had a number of founders who late in the process were like, let's get under the hood. Let's look at your tech stack. Where's the advantage? Where's the moat? We've asked a few of them some questions with they're coming back, they're like, our lead investor hasn't asked us that. Nobody's asked us those questions. We're like, how are we going to invest in a product company if we don't understand deeply how the product stack is built? And so we, being who we are and intellectually curious and excited about all of this work, we tend to go a little bit deeper and play that into the diligence process.
Let's get a little bit more personal around the sort of the challenges going from being an operator to taking some time off to like doing some angel investing to then all of a sudden like raising a fund with a co-founder. It sounds great on paper. It's not that straightforward. What did you notice is different from your early angel investing in your investing practice? Maybe that's a good place where to start. If you go back to your first angel check and the last check you got with Ben through the fund, how are you approaching this, if different at all?
Yeah, this might speak poorly on my approach as an angel investor, but I find the two extremely different. I was a vibe-based angel investor. It was people that I knew, areas that I was excited about, couple conversations, and I felt the vibes, and I wanted to be a part of the journey. Get me on the train, and I can learn, and I can contribute. I was angel investing personally for network and for learning. I didn't want to lose my money, but I'm not expecting to make my wealth off of my angel checks. I'm doing it for other reasons. The responsibility of managing other people's capital, and particularly because we've raised not from institutions that don't really have a face and a character, but we've raised from people who are trusting us with their own personal money. We take it extraordinarily seriously and we go deep. I feel very grateful to be doing this work. I feel like it is the honor of a lifetime to be able to be a capital allocator to high impact companies that are also going to be billion-dollar companies, and to work at the intersection of that, specifically with respect to the climate tech, is a bit of a dream come true. Sometimes I'm frustrated with how much we haven't gotten done, but sometimes I pinch myself and say, this is quite an honor. I think the second thing that I want to make sure I get across very clearly is when I met Ben, I realized he was someone special. After working with him for 2 years, he's just one of the smartest people I've had the pleasure of working with. His ability to synthesize things on the fly is always very impressive and humbling. He's a wonderful person, and he's become the king of climate in Seattle. His aura reflects that. It's an absolute pleasure to have found a partner in crime that I can work with and learn from. I feel very lucky to work with someone so capable as well as so values oriented.
And what's something that you wish you knew before formalizing this partnership that you would tell your younger self? You mentioned the burden and responsibility of managing other people's money for sure. That's something that until you do it, you do not quite know what the weight of that feels like. But is there something else?
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple things. One, that an operator turned investor told me as an insight that has played true, which is when you're building a business, and especially I was kind of the GM. So when I came to the exec team with my business at hand, I was an expert on my business. I knew my shit inside and out and wanted and needed to be the smartest guy in the room. Today, I am never the smartest guy in the room. I am always learning because the founders are the experts. They're spending their entire life on this. And here we are coming in to transition from a domain expert to pattern recognition and a higher level value add has been a humbling and difficult transition for me personally. Nobody likes fundraising with VCs. Fundraising with LPs is even harder for a variety of different reasons. But I think the thing that hits me the most is it's very different to be selling yourself as the product. And as someone who is extroverted, but is not necessarily putting himself at the center of the circle, I find it personally a little bit difficult to say, bet on me, even though I know that's what you're doing. When I'm used to saying, yes, bet on me and this team, this lending product is built on an algorithm set that has been tested over 10 years. We've got all this data, and you're actually betting on what we're bringing to the table as a product. Another reason why I went into this was I knew I wanted to do something in climate, but I wasn't obsessed with any one problem. Like I found myself as I was educating myself, getting excited about a lot of different things. And so that was one of the appeals of becoming an investor. But the flip side of that is now I'm getting excited about a whole bunch of shit. You make that investment and then you're supporting the portfolio company from afar and you have to move on to the next thing. There's a desire in me and Ben as well. We just kind of want to go deep and spend all day on this one problem, but you can't as an investor. The last thing I'll say is the partnership, right? I was part of close-knit exec teams and early stage companies. I was not the founder myself, but I've worked with founders who have stepped away. At a company, it's a lot more fluid. In this game, it's not. You're the GP and the LP is signing up to you.
How do you guys keep all of your ducks in a row? There's just the two of you. There is 87 LPs. There is going to be 30 checks. How does the firm function on a daily basis?
As former operators, I managed 4 businesses across 3 continents in an industry that never sleeps and has no stability. We were doing unsecured lending in emerging markets to the lower economic segments. We never, ever didn't have a fire. I think the approach we bring to this is one of ruthless prioritization. Just this maniacal focus of operators. Tactically, we live on Notion. Everything is built into that. Notion has a Claude integration, so we're starting to build AI automation into the fund. And I think just like our startups, we are a native AI fund from the get-go. And so I think that's going to give us some outsized advantages to some established funds. I had a really smart investor recently ask, like, how are you going to manage yourselves with 30 companies? I was like, to be perfectly honest, we've never invested in 30 companies. So we don't actually know. I can tell you what we're doing with 14 and how that's different from what we were doing with 1. Honestly, it is a constant learning journey and a humbling one. The seed stage startup that we're going to iterate very, very fast and see what's breaking. But I'm also very keen to talk to other GPs and beg, borrow, and steal from what has already been done because we're not career investors here.
What's the one thing that we didn't talk about that you're going to walk away from this recording and be like, damn it, now nobody's going to get to hear this great idea that I wanted to share?
Just a quick smattering of make sure people leave with an understanding that The train has left the station in terms of the fact that the economy is being dramatically impacted by the climate. California electricity rates have doubled in less than 10 years. And at the same time, we're adding more power capacity to the US grid than we have in decades. And guess what? This year, 93% of expected capacity added to the US grid is expected to be from renewables because it is just cheaper and better. And the market will always win, right? Solar and storage capacity is growing by 30 to 50% per year, and prices are plummeting. We added the equivalent of 10 Hoover dams in solar capacity last year alone. The scale of this transition is literally $1 trillion. And it is happening because the market will pick the winners. And it just like happened in the mid 2000s when coal was king and we had 310 new coal plants planning to be built. And then guess what? We discovered fracking. And natural gas went from 5% to 50% of the energy equation. And it was the death of king coal in the US, right? No matter what the Bush administration wanted. We are on a path to 2 to 3 degrees Celsius over the goal that we want in terms of temperature due to the climate. But there are massive businesses that are going to be built to get us to the other side of this. Crisis is happening and it's urgent, and we need speed and scale, and we have the technology to do it, and it's already happening. So get on board.
Anay, thank you so much for your time. This was great. I cannot wait to hear more about the portfolio evolution over time. It's pretty clear what it is that you guys are doing. So congratulations and thank you for your service. I think we definitely all need more of what your portfolio founders are doing. And by means of an incentive, I think we need more of you guys to be able to create those opportunities. So thank you.
You've just listened to another episode of Slice, the podcast for emerging managers. Thank you so much, Anay, for joining us. And thank you so much to Ethan Austin for introducing us to Anay. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe to our Substack not to miss future episodes.